to welcome to the stage our third startup, PoSciDon. The stage is yours.
All right, good day everyone. My name is Marco Hubert. Our first title slide got butchered by technology, but I'm going to present you PoSciDon, and we aim to revolutionize the scientific funding process. And as a scientist, I experienced a lot of issues in science funding, and of course we had to check if other scientists experienced the same issues. So what we did is we surveyed 44 scientists, and we asked if they also experienced issues. And they experienced funding issues, they experienced bias in the funding process, and also a lack of incentives/rewards. And some other issues in science is that when money is raised for charities, only 50 to 60% of that money raised goes to the charities. And then between the scientists and the charity, there's so many middlemen that the amount of money that eventually goes to the scientists is significantly lower. So as a solution, we have PoSciDon DAO, where we aim to become a decentralized biotech company, and we do that by streamlining the funding process, and we focus on personalized medicine more later, and we also reward investors and scientists accordingly, and we hope to eliminate most of the bias in the funding process. So we focus on personalized medicine because current treatments that are being made often target whole patient groups, and that often results in a high failure rate. And by targeting subpopulations of patient groups that have a similar genetic background, we can then have a more personalized approach to treating patients. And because of these factors, we can expect some growth in the personalized medicine market in the next 10 years. So to incentivize donors, investors, and other parties, and of course scientists in our DAO, we have a multi-token model. And we start with the donation token, which you receive upon donating. It's account bound, it's fungible, and you can get voting power if you stake it through our platform. We also have a tradable token, and that tradable token, as the name says, you can trade it. And you also receive a dividend from the potential revenue that we can generate through our DAO. And also there's a tax rate, which we can talk about more later on. Then we have the third token, is a participation token. When you participate in our governance system, you get this token, and if you stake it together with the tradable token, you can expect more of the tradable token, and that should incentivize people to participate in the governance system. But as we have a limited amount of tokens for that staking program, it's mainly in the beginning to incentivize people, and also to lower the token velocity of our tradable token. So our business model is quite simple. We fund research projects. The scientists do everything they can to generate IP and data assets, and those data and IP assets, we license them to third parties, and then we hope to expect to generate some revenue. And that revenue will be distributed as follows. 30% goes to scientists, 30% to investors, and the rest to our treasury to further fund other projects. So, also our logo got butchered here, but we have Vita DAO and Athena DAO as our biggest competitors, and we as PoSciDon on the left, right in front of it, we focus on the venture and bio DAO aspect. We also focus on personalized medicine, as I said before. We're on the Zcash network. We have a dividend for scientists, dividend for tradable token holders. We have on-chain donations, and we have a multi-token model to incentivize donors, investors, and scientists. Also that got butchered. So we had nice arrows there, but so here what we have achieved so far. We have surveyed researchers, we have an app launched on testnet. We have, of course, we have some ongoing development with that. I'm working on that. The most important part is that together with Ernst & Young, we're setting up the right legal entity for this DAO, and then we can start building a community. Hopefully, when our community is big enough, we can then offer our tradable token to the community, to investors, and then hopefully, with the funds raised, we can fund some scientific research projects. So with PoSciDon, we hope to create a scientific funding process that's non-discriminatory, that's decentralized and democratized, that will help further scientific discoveries in the personalized medicine field, So please, thank you for listening, and please join our community.
24 seconds to spare.
So my first question is about bias, because you mentioned that that's an issue, and I am aware that that is an issue when it comes to reviewing scientific journals, but how are you eliminating bias by doing this?
I mean, I can talk a bit about my personal experiences, but without saying too much, we get funding from one specific organization, and because of a disagreement so they gave already some funding, but not enough for the whole project. And at some point, because they disagreed with some of the progress we made, they decided to just stop the funding. So that's my personal experience. We had our work, we worked around that because I'm a fourth-year PhD candidate, so we have 4 or 5 projects we need to finish. So we had some, improvising to do because the funding stopped. But that is, I would say, bias in the form, and also centralization actually, that if they disagree with my supervisor in this case on a personal or even professional level, that's some form of bias that we can eradicate by having a lot of people vote on on who receives what funding, or which research project receives what funding. So that in that way we attempt to, we cannot eliminate all the bias, of course, but at least most of the bias that's involved in the process, what I experienced myself. Oh, sorry. Can anyone hear me?
It's for the video.
Oh, I see. So yeah, I think, does that answer your question?
Yes, so you're saying that you're eliminating bias by having lots of people vote on what gets funded?
Yes, and yeah, so what we also want to do and we're still in doubt about that, but when a project is up for proposal, if we actually share any details regarding their impact factor, well, who the person is that's leading the research, and the details of the institute, because there's institutional bias, people think some institutes are better than others. So if we remove that, people can then look at the project itself and then say, okay, I like this project, regardless of who is actually doing that project. So also there we try to remove some of that bias.
Okay, and you mentioned, so are you a DAO or are you a company? And who are the decision makers?
Well, a company in that sense relates to that we are, well, more like a business, I would say. And a DAO can also be a business, right? So we generate revenue, and the only thing is we redistribute that revenue to our token holders.
Yes, I want to make it a little bit more tangible also for the audience. So if someone in the audience wants to invest with a research project that's on your platform, what token does he have to buy first? How does he get in to start donating something? Does he have to buy the OP token, the SCI token, or there's another token? So I'm getting a bit confused here.
That's fine. So, well, it depends. If you want to donate, you donate. You get the donation token. There's no financial value in that because it's a donation, right? So you should not expect any dividend or potential price appreciation. So that would be the first step if you want to donate. If you want to invest, you would go for the side token.
So if I'm going to donate, that's a donation, I'm not getting anything back?
Yes.
Okay,
that's
why?
A donation, right?
So why not just USDC? Why not ETH? Why does it have to be a new token?
Oh no, so you can donate with ETH and with USDC, we implement that, but as a return to vote, there's something that, like a token that gives you voting power, that you can use in our ecosystem. That's what the Don't Take token has as a purpose. So it's not yeah, so you can use ETH and.
Okay, so I get this. So still, feedback would be for investors to make that easier. Maybe make less tokens, maybe only one token. But then still, if I want to invest in it, how do you say? What do you tell investors that they are going to make return on their investment? How does it work for them?
We try to simplify that. So when regarding the side token, we offer that through a liquidity bootstrap auction. So people should, we offer the token, and then with the price discovery that the market, decides, with the minimum taken into account, they can buy that token, and then when they stake that through our platform, they get the governance power, and then they can vote, and then they just have to wait.
Anyone who does not get it, or am I still the only one?
I'm willing to
for an investor, right? So
what exactly?
there's another.
Yeah, if I'm an investor, which token am I buying? Because the first
The
one,
side token.
What's the name? Oh,
The side token, the tradable one. So the other ones that they don't have any trade, they cannot be traded. So the first one and third one that I showed cannot be traded. So there's nothing to invest. Yeah, it's a donation that you make. So you don't, as an investor, you don't donate, right? You invest. So you get the tradable token to then eventually sell your, if you make a profit or whatever, or if you want for the wait for the dividend.
And how do you make a profit? So that's where you're selling the scientific research to.
Yeah, so with the money raised, we go fund scientific research projects with the aim to generate data and IP assets. And those assets should then, with our team, we hope to commercialize that and then generate some revenue. And then, according to what we showed, we can redistribute that to the holders.
The 30%.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, that's only going to the SCI token.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, still feedback. I would still use less tokens. But okay.
Fair.
My feedback.
Fair. Okay.
I'll give the word to Justin.
Okay, so first of all, credit for not claiming full decentralization. You're the first one to do that, so I won't give you a hard time about that. So I actually think that's very good of you to not try to, coat yourself with the theater of decentralization. So I think that's great. Now, the biggest problem I actually have with this, and my peer at VanEck also touched on this actually, is with the donation token. So I actually think that, sorry, let me just get my notes. I actually think specifically, your project should not be seen as a charity in any way, shape or form. And that's why I don't think you should have that donation token, because I think that's very misleading. Because it's clearly not a charitable organization, especially considering that you have a 90 to 70% pre-mine in your token allocation. Now that depends how you count it, but at least in terms of how I tend to count pre-mines, it's about 90 to 70%. So I don't understand why you'd even entertain the idea of donations when this is a for-profitable enterprise.
Yeah, so I see your point. We're not necessarily marketing ourselves as a charitable organization, but if people still want to, if they don't care about the investment aspect, they just want to, contribute financially to a scientific research project, then that is still, like, we won't have the ANBI status, or we won't have like a stichting. But there's still the opportunity for people to, like, okay, I don't care about the investment, I still want to give money, and I want to have a say in what that money is going to do. That's the intention of why we introduced.
Because usually when you donate, you don't have other parties directly profiting from that donation in such an explicit way as is the case here.
Exactly.
So I think that's very problematic.
Yeah.
I will say I like the idea of the participation token. That was actually an interesting aspect of governance design. So I actually thought that was actually pretty interesting.
Thank you.
Actually, so yeah, I think that was my main point for now. Was really that I would really stay away from. I would even drop the donation token completely, just because it's.
Okay.
I think it's you're running into problematic ethical grounds there. Especially considering the pre-mine, especially considering, oh yeah, I do have one more criticism, I'm glad I thought of this. This is also a big one actually. So I've always been very critical of crowdsourcing investment decisions. And in this case, what you're doing is you're crowdsourcing through token holders medical research decisions. And I'm going to be honest with you here, I think that's a terrible idea. Like really a terrible idea. I don't think that's the type of decisions that you should be crowdsourcing. What I would recommend is some form of delegation, where maybe you have experts that people can vote for, and then they would be making these kind of expert decisions. I just don't think that your average token holder in crypto is going to be making informed and good decisions when it comes to medical research. So I would seriously considering rethinking your governance, your decision-making process in terms of how you make decisions. I would start thinking about setting up committees, sub-DAOs, delegation, this sort of thing, because otherwise I would not have a lot of confidence in the decisions that are being made.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. Yeah, we are still in the process of setting up our governance system, and delegation definitely is one of the points we are considering for sure. Yeah. Nothing is set in stone yet, so regarding the governance part.
Yeah, so I definitely recommend thinking about that. But yeah, I think it's a very interesting project you have here, so I'll pass it on to David. Thank you.
Good on you for coming up here. You know about molecule.xyz?
I do, yeah.
I think they're doing a good job, and it seems like you're going to go head on with them in a way, which we had.
Doesn't have to be direct competition.
Yeah, I think it's a clear problem. So I think it's a good way to attack. I agree with Thijs. There's too many tokens, way too complex, because then you just increase the attack surface, and you're talking about like governance. Like the whole realm of governance attacks is like sort of just starting to get discovered now. So one thing is like, so you donate, you get this soulbound token essentially, and then you can vote. So potentially you could like sway the vote by donating a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
So there's still like some value there, right? But you're saying like it's a donation, there's no value, but there's value, right?
Yeah.
And then if I lose my wallet, lose access to it, will it ever pass the threshold of votes needed, right? So there's all these like things like that. Or I could donate from my wallet, and I take majority voting power. Then I sell access of that wallet to someone else, and I've sold my tokens, right? So that's the thing with like when the more tokens you add, it's way too much complexity, and especially for something like this, like Justin said, like governance matters. But you have to be really careful with how you design systems. And then on the other, one of the slides I saw you said a 1% sales tax. Like that's another problematic as well. Like how do you enforce that on the contract level?
It's only so when with the focus on decentralized exchanges. So when we register the router address in the smart contract, and when the money goes towards the router address, then the tax is being charged.
Okay, but you know people are just going to go around that. Like someone's going to create a router contract.
Yeah, there are. I mean, we cannot 100% enforce that for sure, but I mean, it's to some degree.
Yeah. So essentially, in that sense, you punish the non-sophisticated traders, and the sophisticated traders will just use the wrappers, and they won't get penalised. So that's the other thing where it's like you try and like maybe over-engineer the tokenomics of this, and it just creates more problems.
I see.
I think some other people experiment. I think the Fae token experimented with sales tax. They failed horribly because there's sort of these compounding effects that happen in like the worst case scenario. Then it gets worse and worse. So yeah, I think the problem you're trying to solve is very good, but around the tokens, it's very problematic at the moment. Too many tokens, but. Yeah, you didn't mention anything about bonding curves. Is there bonding curves here?
No.
You do.
Like if we have any liquidity pools or
No, bonding curves. So,
Okay.
so the way Molecule works is they deal with bonding curves, and that's how they do price discovery. And there's a lot more simpler mechanism, right? So I'd say like the biggest for those that aren't aware, Molecule XYZ is essentially like they started this many years ago, something similar. So I'd look at them and like not copy their model, but like they did things for a very good reason, right? And then I think their token economics or tokenomics is probably a good starting place for you to improve on. Cool.
Sure, thanks. I'll take that.
I do
Yeah,
actually
for
have
sure.
another question.
Yes.
After listening to Justin talk about the issue with donations, which then made me think about, again, back to this question about eliminating bias. If you are primarily delivering to investors, it seems that your bias then will be selecting projects that are profitable. How would you approach that then? Because I would imagine that donations would potentially eliminate that issue of profitability. But if you have to balance this concept of profitable and not profitable, how are you actually eliminating bias in the projects that you choose?
I see. Yeah, that's fair. So we would focus that. So you're saying that our bias is that we focus on the profitability. Yeah. So, I mean, well, first of all, therapies need to be generated, right? Therapies need to be created. Like we're not focusing on fundamental research. So we're focusing on research that can actually create value to science, to patients. So that, and then
And the token holders.
and of course the token, but like initially for the research itself, its core is to benefit science and patients. So that it's a byproduct, right? The byproduct is to generate a profit or generate revenue. But the idea of helping the persons in the field is still there. We just focus on projects that can be commercialized or attempt to be commercialized, right? And a lot of things in science go wrong or don't work. So yeah, I would say pretty much everything that's non-fundamental research is there to be commercialized. And that's a lot of research. So fundamental research is also it's quite a group of people that do that. So they look at certain pathways and certain, basic fundamental biology stuff. But if you look at the translational part, that's where people create new therapies. So that's on its own already biased. And we contribute to that too. But, yeah.
I have a question actually, like when you look at how difficult it is to do governance in crypto, just in general, and when you look at all the proposals that go through and voter apathy and the difficulty for the community to be interested and keep track of the things that are being voted on, I feel like you have to also take this in consideration, like the requirement of this DAO, or what you're expecting of your community of token holders. How knowledgeable do they have to be, and also to foresee what will be the profitable ones. I think it's a lot to require. So I'm thinking there's going to be a lot of education to be done on your community of holders, token holders. Yeah.
I agree.
It's
Yeah.
gonna be just
So
an uphill battle. Yeah.
For sure. One thing that we want to, their suggestion was phenomenal. Your suggestion with those subgroups of experts, but like a large amount of people, right? Often scientific advisory boards consist of 2 to 3 people. So we at least try our best to expand that as much as possible.
And who's going to decide who are in those committees and how?
Well, that is, we have so
and
much to figure out.
I mean, if you look
Well,
at
that's what the
MakerDAO
DAO.
today.
That's what the DAO would do, right? The DAO would
The
then
DAO would
select
just-
the experts.
Exactly, yeah. Then they could, we could provide all the information that's necessary to people that could vote on that. But to come back to what you said, I would, what we were thinking of is to at least separate, so we have DAO operations, and we would have DAO like funding for science. So at least we could make it a bit more, give a bit more overview for people to separate those 2 things. And maybe, and with the delegation, it could be made very easy for people to just still participate in governance, but then only on the operation side, or both science funding and operation. So, because I see, when I have to admit, when I go to the VitaDAO Discord, I get a bit overwhelmed with VitaDAO improvement proposal 700 something. I know, but I'm exaggerating, but like it's very, like, there's so many proposals, and it's up to us to make it as easy as possible. But yeah, I mean, any suggestions for governance, like, keep them coming, you know, like, we're all for it, to be honest.
Sterling also made a really good point when it came to the conflict that creates, because someone that's donating is going to have a different motivation from someone that just wants to invest and make money. And so, and I think this also reinforces the point that I don't think that donation token should be there at all. Because if you remove that, now you're just purely profit focused. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that's something that's healthy to just embrace and say, okay, this is the motivation, and we're going to design it in such a way that it brings about good outcomes. I would also just like to comment on my critique of your token economics. I will say it's a little bit unfair because you've had the best documentation out of everyone here. So it's like I'm only not criticizing some of these other projects in as much depth because they don't have the documentation. So I just want to, for all fairness, I just wanted to put that out there for you as well. So
All right.
thank you.
Thank you so much, judges. I'm going to just take a few questions that we got through Slido. Can you tell a bit more on the investor base, and would the typical investor in scientific projects be digital native enough? I think it's about, yeah. So, did you get the question? Like, the investors that you're expecting here, like, how knowledgeable do they have to be about scientific research?
Well, there is something also problematic in
And
science.
judges,
that is-
prepare your grades. Yeah, sorry.
And no, that's fine. Some other issues in science is scientific communication, which means breaking it down in layman's terms.
Yeah.
And luckily my partner is doing that. So she's very competent with the scientific communication, like press releases, other types of communication, and yeah, she's focusing on that aspect too. Like, for people to not have to go through 5 years of studying to understand what we're trying to fund.
All right.
So I think that is,
Very important.
regardless
Yeah.
of the DAO, an issue in science still, which we can also contribute to.
Education side, very important. And then someone is asking, why TK Sync?
It's quick and cheap fees, cheap gas fees.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. Do you know what the average cost is for a research project? Like, how many research projects can you actually put in your platform reasonably?
Well, it depends on the size of the research project and how. A lot of factors actually, but it could be ranging from 50,000 to multiple millions, depending on the size of the project, depending on how many people need to be hired, depending on how outside expertise or needs to be like. But that is.
What's the
Yeah.
expected return on an investment like that? Like, if you put 50,000, like, can you expect millions, or is it just like $5,000?
No, look, if we have someone, if we have a group of people that can create a very valuable database that can put a lot of man hours in generating an extensive database where we can license out the use of that database to other parties, then, you know, maybe with 50,000 you could already generate somewhere. I cannot give any estimates because it doesn't make sense to give any estimates. But yeah, it depends on a lot of factors. It depends on the project itself, and we all try to disclose that as much as possible in what we communicate towards the DAO members. And so yeah, I can't give a straight answer on that. Who owns what? So yeah, that's something we're definitely have thought about, and it limits our group. And maybe we find some early adopters of the medical centers, like, well, for the first couple projects, maybe you can get that data or get some ownership over the IP or something.
Happy to talk about that later.
Yeah, for sure. No, that sounds good. Yeah, I'm all up for it, for sure. Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, you just briefly touched on it. My question is about the ownership of the IP itself and the patents? Like how are you implementing that in the staff?
So what the the goal is that we have the majority, the stake in the IP from our funded research projects. But that comes to what I just said, like depending on, with what kind of party is it, like we are going to fund the research project for. If it's a private, someone who started with an idea, then we have less restrictions regarding that, and then we can come to agreement on who's gonna get what amount and stuff like that.
Any last questions? No? Yeah, yes, I see. One raised hand in the back. And that's the last question, and then we'll have the grades. Yeah?
So you might have people that want to invest in your product or into your project, and if they invest in the side token, they get 30% of the revenue. But outside of that, how are you going to protect the token price or the floor?
Protect what? Sorry?
How are you going to prevent the coin from going down, essentially?
Maybe repeat the question for the video.
So how are we going to prevent for the token to go to zero?
So,
Yeah. There are many projects that are trying to prevent their token from going to zero. First of all, I think that the aspect that you can receive a dividend, of course, the amount that we raise would be based on what the market thinks our DAO is valued. After that, we don't have any decision into that. We try to reduce the token velocity by having a staking there. We have a dividend that could, also be seen as some kind of value, like a share of a company, right? You can also get some dividend or price appreciation, and the rest, there's not much we can control. But not many projects can really, unless you want to manipulate.
Is there some overview or article overview of the intellectual property
Yeah, so what he mentioned, molecule. Oh, sorry. So if we have an overview of the IP assets, maybe on-chain or off-chain, and I think there is an on-chain molecule has the IP NFTs, which it's an NFT representing the intellectual property that an NFT holds, and that is something we could utilize to have a nice overview of which assets we have. And through the molecule platform.
Can I just say one thing quickly?
I started grabbing the microphone.
Last quick one, because you mentioned token velocity. That's so 2017. So there's much more around token price. So don't look into token velocity. That's a bad thing. There's other ways to sustain price, revenue generation, obvious one. Okay. Right. So yeah. We can talk about that later. But there's many different ways, yeah.
Reveal your votes, please.
I said 7.
7. 8.
I'm a 5, but I'm gonna caveat this and say it is part of a global score, so to speak, so I'm comparing you with the rest of the market, and you're clearly at a very early stage of development. So if you figure out some of these things around governance, I actually think this is a very respectable idea and project, especially because you have clearly built-in dividend mechanisms. And that's something I always love to see, because you want to see real value, real utility in cryptocurrency, and I can see that this definitely has the potential to achieve that. So yeah, 5 is a good score for me, is what I'm trying to say. Well done. Here you go.
Congratulations.